I'd like to call the regular meeting of Sumter County Council for Tuesday, September 8th to order. Ms. McGaney, would you please give us an invocation?
Bringing us together for the meeting that is before us. We thank you for 2 successful committee meetings, and we invite your presence into this one as well. We thank you for all of your blessings and ask that you continue to bless every member of our council and everyone in the whole county. Thank you for answering our prayers for love and give them peace. These are all blessings we thank in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, sir.
Made for approval. Second. It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve tonight's agenda. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The agenda is approved. I have a motion to accept our minutes from our regular meeting for Tuesday, August the 25th.
I move for adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve our minutes for our regular meeting for Tuesday, August 25th. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Approval of the minutes. Land use matters and rezoning requests. Ms. Rudman, good afternoon. How are you?
Good evening. Our first item on the agenda is going to be RZ 2010. I'll give them just a second in the back to bring that up. Next slide, please. This is a request to rezone 1650 South Ginyard Parkway from agricultural conservation to limited commercial. It's about a 2.2 acre parcel. The applicant is Mr. Raymond Smith, the property owner. Slide. This is on the south side of Ginyard Parkway, kind of adjacent to Rainier Boulevard, which is the access to the recycling center. To the north, it's on Ginyard Parkway. Slide. It's predominantly zoned agricultural conservation on the south side with heavy industrial on the north side. The south side of South Ginyard Parkway to date is really a small residential enclave in agricultural zoning. Slide. This property is heavily wooded. It did host a home site at one point. I believe there is a dilapidated residential structure on the property. Future development plans would actually reuse some of the existing infrastructure on that particular property. Slide. If successfully rezoned, the applicant's intent is to construct an approximately 4,800 square foot building to run a car stereo retail and installation facility. As part of this project, the owner intends to partner with Morris College to offer some training and internship opportunities for small business development. The property is currently 2 separate parcels. They will be combined. We had an extensive review of this site to ensure that it would meet development standards with the commercial zoning in light of its particular location. We did find that it does have sufficient space to meet those setback standards based on the limited commercial zoning district. It should be noted that this use is actually also a C500 use of the AC district, as well as being permitted in general commercial, limited commercial, and neighborhood commercial. Slide. This is on a priority commercial corridor in the 2040 comprehensive plan adjacent to a priority mixed-use node. The 2040 comprehensive plan is a long-term horizon planning document, so commercial development on this section of Ginyard Parkway really hasn't developed in this area yet. Based on that, we really do find that a less intense commercial designation, such as limited commercial, is more appropriate than trying to go to a more intense general commercial. Slide. There are some environmental influences on this property. We do have some indication from the National Wetlands Inventory that there are some wetlands on the property. This would have to be investigated through the development process. Slide. It does have a drainage canal on the eastern side of the property, and it is heavily wooded. That's kind of that triangular portion of the property that you're seeing there. And then just to the east of that, there is a commercial development in the fact that there is a church on that property. Slide. This is in the county, so they will have to develop using septic tank on that particular property. It is not adjacent to the city, so public sewer services would likely not be available. Slide. Planning Commission is recommending approval of this request. We do find that rezoning to limited commercial, a less intense commercial designation, is both supported by the 2040 plan as well as the existing pattern of development. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Move for approval. Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we have first reading on RZ 2010. All in favor? All opposed? First reading of RZ 2010 is approved.
Slide. Our next request is RZ 2012. It's at the corner of Patriot Parkway and Deschamps Road. This is a county request. The applicant's J.H. Seal and Son, being represented by Louis Tisdale of Black River Land Services as the property developer. The request is to rezone an approximate 2-acre portion of property that's right at the intersection from agricultural conservation to limited commercial. Slide. It is a 2-acre portion of a larger 7-acre tract. It is not contiguous to the city at this time. Slide. It is a wooded tract. It is in planted pines. Just to the south of it is Stafford Meadows subdivision. To the east of it is Patriot Palms Apartments, as well as the Sumter West Plan development. Slide. It is currently zoned agricultural conservation, and in its immediate vicinity is residential multifamily, some R6 zoning, as well as planned development. The Sumter West Plan development, which this is actually a combination of residential and professional office and some neighborhood commercial retail. Slide. As we said, the intent is to facilitate development of a future convenience and gas station center on that particular site. It is currently undeveloped. This would be a neighborhood supporting development. Slide. It is wooded today. It's right there at the pinnacle of where Patriot Parkway and Deschamps Road meet. Slide. And it is in a priority mixed-use node, which does support commercial designations in this particular location. Slide. Planning Commission is recommending approval of this request. We do find that it is consistent with the 2040 land use plan. Also, it is at the intersection of 2 minor arterial roadways, and the development pattern surrounding it does support this type of use and request. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Move first reading.
Second. It's been moved and properly seconded that we have first reading of RZ 2012. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? First reading of RZ 2012 is approved.
Slide. Our next request is an ordinance amendment 2003 for general merchandise stores with SIC code 53 in the limited commercial and neighborhood commercial zoning districts. This request is actually coming from planning department staff, and it's really kind of grown out of the several requests that you've seen in the last couple of years to rezone pieces of property that are out in the county in fairly rural areas to general commercial. As we started looking at the designation of general merchandise stores, it includes everything from a small Dollar General all the way up to Walmart big boxes. They have clearly different impacts on the landscape. So we took this as an opportunity to try and develop some standards to separate those 2 tiers of development. So I'm going to walk you through that. Please stop me if you have any questions. Slide. So SIC code 53 actually includes a wide variety of things, all the way from your small variety 5 and dime stores all the way up to your big box Walmarts, Kmarts, those sorts of stores. It also includes your smaller miscellaneous general retail stores. Slide. As part of this request, we are looking at separating SIC code 53 into 2 different categories: an 11,000 square foot gross floor area or less designation, and anything over 11,000 square feet. We did work with some of the dollar store retailers that we've worked with in the past to talk to them about what size building footprint they are generally using in their more rural areas, and they did come to the consensus that 11,000 square feet or smaller is generally the size that they are putting out in their rural areas. Also, we are looking at including the 11,000 square foot or less within the limited commercial and neighborhood commercial districts as a conditional use. Right now, the only zoning district that general merchandise retailers are allowed in is general commercial, or an AC as a C500 use. Slide. When we look at creating a conditional use, we also wanted to look at creating some specific criteria to ensure good site design so that there would be compatibility with the areas that they're at. Right now, when you're locating something in the agricultural district next to whether it's residential or not, there's far fewer criteria and review requirements to ensure compatibility with either a neighboring house or anything else that's next to it. So we're looking at requiring them to meet all of the general conditional use criteria that we already have established in 5B1A through 5B1F, as well as the commercial development criteria in the ordinance. Looking at limiting the number of driveways to 1 driveway per street frontage, slide. Spelling out some specific buffering criteria where they can either use a combination of opaque vegetative screening or employ fencing, depending on what's adjacent to them, whether it's a farm field or a house or a business or what have you. Slide. We're also looking at requiring in the parking lots to actually put tree islands at the end of parking spaces so that we don't end up with parking lots that are just massive areas of concrete with no vegetation in them that really isn't compatible with what's around them, as well as requiring irrigation systems and encouraging the use of existing vegetation on the property in lieu of new planting. Slide. We are also looking at clearly spelling out dumpster enclosures so that they are materials that require minimal amounts of maintenance in the long term. Screening on 3 sides by either masonry, stucco, or vinyl exterior material. We shied away from allowing wooden privacy fencing because generally those tend to fall apart over time very quickly and they're not properly maintained, so you end up with this garbage collection area next to a house that's just in very bad condition. Also limiting the height of the structure, as well as requiring that there are gates on it to enclose it so that you don't see what's inside. We do spell out some lighting requirements in these areas so that we are making sure that if they are next to a residence, that the nighttime lighting is not going to impact those neighbors, which also will require the submission of a lighting plan at the time of development. Currently, we do not require that. So we are adding language into the ordinance that talks about the amount of foot candles that would spread off of the site at night. Slide. We're looking at revising some descriptive wording. Currently, we also have SIC code 59 listed as general merchandise stores, but that's in an inappropriate labeling, so we're going to update that. And then we're correcting some cross-referencing issues that we have found in the ordinance as we were digging through this to make sure that everything was clear. Slide. Planning Commission does recommend approval of this, retailer does, and that with specific conditions that are designed to mitigate the conflicts with less intensive land uses, it's more likely that these NC and LC districts would be more appropriate in an agricultural area as opposed to trying to rezone a piece of property to general commercial, our most permissive district. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Chairman, question.
Mr. Edens?
What determines whether or not they have to have a retention pond?
That is actually determined based on the stormwater management ordinance. How large the property is, what the soil type is, how much impervious surface they have. Some of it's driven by their DOT encroachment permits because their post-construction runoff cannot exceed pre-construction runoff, which sometimes is what spurs the requirement to build a retention pond. Usually, if it's a site that's less than an acre in size, they get an exemption from the local stormwater ordinance, but the requirement to build a pond is pushed into them by having to get their DOT encroachment permits. Did I answer your question?
Somewhat. I know this was mentioned, might have been a year, might have been 2 years ago now, about retention ponds, and I guess it's up to, I don't know who's it's up to as far as design and where they have to place them.
They usually try to stick them at the low point on the property because otherwise it requires mass regrading of the site.
Yeah. Well, I'm just, and where I'm going with this is the one, the Dollar General out on 15 North. They put the retention pond between 15 and the parking lot and then the building. Well, it's so grown up, it just looks terrible around those retention ponds, and I guess, I don't know, unless we're gonna have to make them do something with them This is in an entrance into town on 15 North. That's just, if you haven't seen.
Probably denotes how long I've been hanging around. We tried to work with him a lot to get them to move that somewhere else on the site, and we just don't have the same regulatory language that we've been able to create in the city as we do in the county to try and compel relocation of those sorts of things. There are things that we can look at in our regulatory ordinance that pushes those facilities to another location. It's just that right now, it's really working back and forth with the developer and the designer to try and get them to work with us to put it in a more aesthetically appealing location.
Either that or have some teeth in there to make them maintain it. Where it at least looks like a little pond. I mean, this thing is growing up trees all around it and just looks pretty bad. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Move for first reading.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we have first reading on ordinance 2003. All in favor? All opposed? First reading of ordinance 2003 is approved. Ms. Rubin.
RZ 2011 is a third reading for 1855 Loring Mill Road. The applicant's Mr. Jeffrey Fall to rezone 12.1 acres from residential 15 to agricultural conservation. There have been no changes to this request since second reading and public hearing.
Move for approval. Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we have third and final reading on 2933. All in favor? I said all in 2933. I meant the rezoning request 2011 on Loring Mill Road. My mistake. All in favor? All opposed? Third reading is approved. First reading on ordinance number 2933. Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Chair, members of the council, this is first reading to approve the sale of a piece of property on the corner of Racetrack Road and the railroad tracks, about 20 acres, and we're still negotiating the actual contract with the proposed purchaser, about 20 acres, and we're really negotiating on what options or right of first refusal the purchaser will have after the sale of the 20 acres. But we would like to go ahead and have first reading to keep this project moving if we could.
Any questions for Mr. Bryant?
Move first reading.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we have first reading on ordinance number 2933. All in favor? All opposed? Ordinance 2933 is approved. First reading of ordinance 2934. Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, 2934 and 2935 are related. 934 has to do with approving a fee in lieu of tax agreement between Sumter County and an economic development project known as Tiger 5. We've been back and forth with him a little bit about some of the subtle points of the fee in lieu of tax agreement, and I hope to have a closer to final agreement for you at our next meeting. But again, we'd like to go ahead and have first reading, keep this project moving.
Move for approval. First reading.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we have first reading on ordinance 2934. All in favor? All opposed? First reading of ordinance 2934 is approved. Ordinance 2935, Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, this next ordinance is to amend the agreement we have with Lee County concerning a multi-county industrial park, and what we plan to do is put all that property that we own between St. Matthew's Church Road and Racetrack Road, 521 and the railroad tracks into a multi-county park. We refer to it in the past as the Lewis Lawrence track. So, the idea is to put all that track into a multi-county park.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we have first reading on ordinance 2935. All in favor? All opposed? Hearing none, first reading for ordinance number 2935 is approved. Come now to committee reports. The Fiscal Tax and Property Committee did meet today. All of our members were present. We came out, and there is a motion and a second for council. The motion and the second is to use up to $300,000 from the hospitality fund balance for a project out at our golf course. All in favor? All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved. Monthly reports. It's part of the packet.
Part of the pack, yes, sir.
Okay. County Administrator's report, Mr. Mixon.
Mr. Chair, just a couple of quick items related to COVID as an update. Some of you may have seen this morning, it was reported on the news medias about a pedestrian death here in Sumter. Happy to state that that report was made in error, that the death was not a pediatric, excuse me, not pedestrian, pediatric death. It was an elderly woman. I think they said 81 years old, but spoke with the coroner this morning, and he was able to track that information down for us. Unfortunately, we have had 4 other deaths here in Sumter since our last meeting, and all 4 were elderly and all 4 were African American. We have seen a pattern of the COVID-related incidents slow down. Last Friday we had 10 on that Friday, but since then we've had 1, 3, and 2. But unfortunately we have Labor Day event this past week, so we'll wait and see what those numbers. Usually it'll take till Wednesday or so before we start seeing those numbers show up here in Sumter. Also, I'd like to report that we do have testing sites now. There's been an arrangement made with MUSC that they will be holding testing sites in the Sumter area every Thursday. The first one coming up at the Civic Center. I believe it's this Thursday, right? And then it'll be followed by another one at Eastern, and then they'll let us know when those other sites are available. But plans are, again, for MUSC to hold testing sites every Thursday until further announced in the Sumter area. And that's all I have, sir.
I apologize to council. We got to start putting this thing in bold. I can't see it. Are there any reports from council members?
Before you move on, can I get a clarification on that, please?
Yes, sir.
The number of deaths that the coroner is reporting is how many?
4.
I mean, total.
Since our last meeting, I didn't ask in total.
49, so 4
more, yes, sir.
53. And I'm concerned because DHEC is stating that we had 69 deaths. And, you know, there's a big difference when you look at that. What is the number of black males?
I don't have the breakup in male, female. I just know that all 4 of the last victims were
4 were black
African American.
females?
African American. I don't know if they're male or female. He didn't share that
they were
information with me.
African-Americans.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
What I'd like to get to, and I don't know if you can get this, but I was looking on the site for veterans throughout the country, and they talk about many veterans, particularly older veterans that are dying from COVID-19. Is there any way that the coroner, if you ask him, can he get the status of the jobs that they have, if they were veterans, rather?
They're veterans. I can ask.
That's all.
I can ask.
If they were military veterans.
I can ask that question. He may be able to tell based on hospitalization records and all that. But I'll be glad to ask.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gary.
Yes, sir.
Again, are there any reports from council members on meetings, trainings, or other conferences or comments? Hearing none, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we adjourn. All in favor?